Hi everyone, and welcome to Noona's Noonchi, where I do a deep dive into some of our favorite K-dramas from a mental health perspective. More on suicide, trigger warning. Let's talk DP, Deserter Pursuit. This is not normally the K-drama I would watch, just like Taxi Driver, but my husband wanted to see it, and he humors me a lot with the other K-dramas that I want to watch, so I decided to humor him. Plus, it has Jung Hae-in, and I heard good things. Suicide is a big theme throughout this K-drama, but I'm going to talk about things and lay it out best for you to talk about suicide. Again, suicidality, the term that includes suicidal ideation, thinking about it, making suicide plans, and suicide attempts, all throughout the K-drama. It's a big theme. It's disturbing, it's intense, it's difficult to watch. I will tell you that after I watched an episode, I binged it pretty much, and the last couple I had to watch on separate days. I had to watch Hometown Cha-Cha-Cha with Kim Sun-ho and Shim Min-na or Reply 1988 to feel better because I didn't feel great after watching it. So it's not a kind of K-drama I recommend to improve your mental health. But let's talk about suicide because I want to address it in honor of this month, National Suicide Prevention Month, and talk about a subject or something that's very difficult to share about and the stigma surrounding it. Look at DP. The actual premise in and of itself is disturbing. It bothers me. The whole thing is about pursuing deserters of the military. That's what Jung Hae-in and his partner do, and their immediate supervisor, the cute, corny Reply 1988 dad, works with them to do that. But you're talking about deserters. First of all, the term itself makes it sound like they did something wrong. Well, you're not supposed to desert the military, true, and they did it without permission. But the whole point about DP is the stories behind these deserters. And obviously, the stories of the military police, like Jung Hae-in, that follows these deserters, who tries to catch them, and what they uncover about these deserters. I don't like it. It starts off from the very get-go with a deserter dying of suicide. Spoiler alert, sorry. But what the immediate supervisor, the Reply 1988 dad, says to Jung Hae-in, because they didn't get to him in time, they didn't catch the deserter in time, is that it's your fault he died. Now, I am not an expert on suicide, but from a mental health perspective, as a licensed clinician, that is not good to say, especially coming from a supervisor, a 선배, a direct manager, saying that to their managee, putting blame on them for someone's suicide, right? It's difficult. You want to blame. When suicide happens, you want to blame the person or even attempts or even the thought going, yeah, here's why. Remember I mentioned before, it's not about asking why, it's about prevention. Sure, Jung Hae-in and actually, the Reply 1988 guy, Sonu, was his partner at the time. They were having fun, and that's what delayed him to catch this guy, the deserter, who left the military without permission. But do you know the story behind him, the hazing that this kid received, the bullying? Hazing is the best word. It's horrific. And then you actually wonder, gosh, what choice did this deserter have? So the actual premise to catch these deserters, pursue them like they're criminals, I have a problem with. And I don't really understand maybe the purpose behind it, except I'm going to tear it apart a little bit to talk about suicide. A big thing in Korea among veterans across the country, not just in Korea, and highlights the Korean military in obviously a very dark light. Not surprising, and I'm not alluding to anything, I'm just saying that's not surprising. We see a lot of that in film and television, right? The way the military is portrayed. So there's truth to it. So we're talking about the hazing. We see the bullying that these deserters have gone through and why they left. The whole point is their stories and why they left. So then you're left with, they're being pursued. And then the suicide theme throughout, the thinking of it, the lack of choices they have. And then the key phrase in this K-drama, spoiler alert, comes at the end. If I want something to change, I'm going to have to do something. That's a great quote. To make something change, I have to do it. Or I have to do something to create change. I do agree with that statement, but not in the circumstances of DP, right? When the whole point is you catch these deserters, right? You pursue after them, Jung Hae-in and his partner, and the Reply 1988 dad working with them together to catch them. And then for what? You bring them back to the military that they left in the first place because they felt ridiculed, bullied. It was horrific things happening to them, crimes, right? And then they bring them back to the very situation that created this trauma to begin with. A key character in DP, Cho Seok-pong, not butchering his name, sorry, but you know what I'm talking about. Probably in the last several episodes, his story is highlighted. And what's sad is how good he was to Jung Hae-in. On that note, the fact that Jung Hae-in became a deserter pursuiter or DP police military person is the fact that he didn't like the unit he was in because the guy that he was under was a jerk. The same person that hazed or bullied Cho Seok-pong, okay? Tragic ending. So there's a spoiler. I just kind of revealed it right there. But the whole point is what is going to change? What sometimes happens with a suicide or even thinking about it, then making plans, attempting, or perhaps at the very end, tragically following through, is that you feel hopeless, that nothing can change. I want to bring that out. So that's why this K-drama is dark when he says, for it to change, I have to do something. And you can imagine what he does, right? That to me is my problem. So, to the whole point about suicide is that it is preventable. What can we do? Talk about it, make changes systemically. First of all, it has to happen personally as well, right, to make systemic changes. But the whole point about this is to highlight perhaps the systemic change that needs to happen. At the very end of this K-drama, Cho Seok-pong felt like he had no choice, right? And you thought he was going to go one way. He chose another, which to me, I thought was pretty predictable. I saw it coming, which is why I had such a hard time. In fact, I closed my eyes. Okay, and then I had to watch Hometown Cha-Cha-Cha 3 times after that. And I struggled with the whole concept. And what's the message? You have to create change. Change has to happen. Suicide is preventable. What can we do? It's not about blame. In fact, maybe they would have gotten there in time for that particular moment when he didn't burn the charcoal. Sorry, I'm sharing this with the lighter that Jung Hae-in gave him. Okay, that's all the connections there that are very difficult to grasp. However, it's easy to blame someone, and that's what helps you feel better, but that doesn't help, right? Because at the very end of the day, you're, I would say, perpetuating what is happening. It's not about looking at why this happened. Generally, I don't like to look at someone's why of why this had to happen, death by suicide, following through. But in this case, I want to look at the why of the system. Why are there deserters? Why is there even a DPK drama to talk about pursuing these deserters that left a place that where they felt psychologically unsafe? They were traumatized, hazed, bullied, mistreated. Mistreated is even not the word. That's just, I'm minimizing it, really. That's why it's hard to watch. You almost justify why they deserted the military in the first place. And you want to see some people get their comeuppance. Yeah, I'm just being very honest because that's human nature, right? You want to get their vengeance for these people that were wronged and hurt and mistreated. And you see a shift in Cho Seok-pong's personality, character. But I understand it because that is what mistreatment, abuse, horrific abuse can do to someone. But you see the backstory, you almost understand it. Another thing that I think is good about this K-drama actually is understanding what happens to the abused and what we tend to see is their horrific crimes maybe, or what they do, their behavior, and not really look at their backstory. But Cho Seok-pong, you see from the get-go what kind of a good person he was, the trajectory that he could have been on. And then the military honestly failed him. So I'm just going to say it. So I have a problem with the actual premise of the K-drama. Trying to understand the purpose, well, is probably to highlight the darkness of the military, not just in Korea, but everywhere, right? And then the fact that you have to pursue deserters like they committed some crime. Yes, they did wrong by living the military, but they had no choice. Suicide sometimes leaves folks with no choice, but there's always choices. Nothing is linear when it comes to mental health. There's no beginning, middle, and end. Nothing is linear in life, Well, yes, technically, I guess your physical death, but your identity is ever changing. So changes can be made to a system. Why perpetuate it, right? And then you have this horrificness happen and people shocked or like devastated or like, oh my gosh, shamed because somebody died of suicide, and it has to do with the system. So let's look at the system. And the whole point about this is what can change. That's how it ended. In fact, that was the last quote. Yeah, spoiler alert. But I had to share about this because in light of this month, I want to talk more about suicide, suicidality. It's a theme in K-dramas. Let's not ignore it. And I am also guilty of it where I'll see it and be like, oh, but then let's look at the romance and let's look at how cute Jung Hae-in is, how cool the thriller is, how cool the action is. But let's point this out. It was preventable, it was. But not necessarily because Jung Hae-in and his partner could have gotten to him in time. That could have just been one part. But then you're bringing him back to a situation that's difficult, and who knows what could have happened. Does that make sense? So what has to change is something bigger than what we can think of. And that is the message. That is the ending message. And it ends in horrific things happening. But that's what has to change. Look at what's happened in the midst of the pandemic. Some difficult things for things to change. I don't want that to happen. That's not what I'm saying. But that's called second order change in family systems. The rules of a governing system entirely shift, pulled apart, taken apart, broken apart, redefined for the sake of second order change, which is the permanent change, the radical change that you want to happen. My point is, we need second order change for suicide to be preventable, to do something about it, to address mental health, to address the stigma surrounding mental health, suicide, all that comes with it, right? They all are connected. DP does a good job of showing all of this. That's why we were just really wanting to watch it, if that makes sense. You really gravitated to see it. I was, right? Even though it was difficult. But then I wanted to break it down for you guys. And this is the best I could do. In and of itself, it was difficult because of the theme. Pursuing deserters that you don't blame for leaving the military in the first place. They preyed on the weak. That's not the goal or the purpose of the military. It's to empower, build up, because you're doing good for your country. So what's the change there? I don't know. I'm just one person, but I want to talk about how detrimental and harmful it is for our mental health and why suicide rates are increasing. And talking about it more is going to help break through the stigma. When you feel down and out, I mean, that's just an understatement. When you have no hope and you can't make change, one person in one of the episodes said to his mom, well, nothing's going to change. So, and then the mom's like, says to them and yells at the military, something is going to change, right? That's heartbreaking to watch because you don't know if that's the case, and you see it all the time. So if you are able to create change, what is the change you can create? What can you do? You can talk about it. You can bring it up, even if it's difficult. Share about your own experiences. Have someone watch DP if they're able to handle it, to hopefully maybe to address it in a different way. Sometimes it's great to watch these K-dramas to help bring up topics and subjects. That's why I use them in my work in families and school systems. Why not? Use it. It's there. And it is a good K-drama. So that's all I have to say about that, folks. DP, difficult to watch. In and of itself, concept I can't fully accept, I guess, but still thought it was good to showcase how suicide can be preventable. It's not about blaming. It's not a blame game. You can't say somebody, it's because of you and this is what happened. Now, a system can fail you, I believe. And that's probably what happened here. I'm saying probably because I don't want to be adamant about that. Thank you for watching Noona's Noonchi. Please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and hit the bell button to get notified of new episodes to come.